The film opens in the 16th century, in a small village in the heart of England, where we learn that the story is inspired by the life of the great playwright William Shakespeare. At that moment, we are introduced to Agnes, our heroine, living a primitive and simple life, deeply connected to nature. She can speak to birds, understand them, and feel their presence, a gift she inherited from her mother, who was known throughout the village as the absent witch, a woman everyone feared. Meanwhile, the focus shifts to William, a quiet, modest young man with a passion for reading and writing, working alongside his father. In order to repay a lingering debt, he eventually begins teaching Latin to Agnes's younger siblings. Then, at a certain point, we see William pacing back and forth by a window, visibly tense, clearly waiting for someone. As soon as he notices Agnes passing by, he suddenly drops everything in his hands and follows her. His admiration is unmistakable. He approaches and greets her. At that moment, Agnes realizes he is new to the village and says she recognizes him as the Latin tutor who came to teach her younger brothers. He confirms it. However, when she asks why he is there and what made him follow her, William grows nervous. He explains that he was simply getting some fresh air when he saw her passing by with her falcon. Curiosity took over, pushing him to come and introduce himself. He asks for her name. Instead, she avoids the question and refuses to answer. Still, he grows a little bolder, subtly hinting at his attraction to her. Suddenly, Agnes takes his hand. Confused, he asks what she is doing and whether her gesture carries any meaning. Instead of responding, she pulls away. He then asks when he might see her again. Calmly, she tells him that meeting another time would be difficult. With that, she turns away and leaves him behind. Later on, we discover that Agnes possesses special abilities passed down from her mother. The moment she touches someone's hand, she can glimpse a fragment of their future and sense their true intentions. When Agnes returns home, her stepmother immediately begins questioning her, asking where she has been and what she was doing. Agnes explains that she was at the farm checking on the animals. However, the questions continue. Her stepmother asks whether she saw the Latin tutor, having heard from the children that he suddenly abandoned the lesson and left. Agnes firmly denies ever seeing him. We then learn that William's father is a glove maker, burdened with heavy debts owed to Agnes's family. Because of that, William teaches their children in order to repay his father's obligations. Later, William returns home, where his father immediately provokes him, mocking him, and hinting that the children William tutors are, in truth, more capable men than he is, able to carry responsibility, while William himself is useless and good for nothing. He does not stop there. Instead, he goes further, humiliating him and attacking his manhood without mercy. Unable to endure it any longer, William finally speaks up, reminding his father that he teaches those children only to pay off his debts, hoping it might soften him and bring the insults to an end. However, this only enrages his father even more, furious that William dares to answer back word for word. At that moment, Mary, William's mother, asks him whether he has seen anyone else from that family, especially their eldest daughter. She is clearly referring to Agnes. Cautiously, she warns him about her, repeating what people in the village have been whispering, that Agnes's mother was a witch, that she wandered like someone possessed, and that Agnes herself had been seen behaving strangely, walking through the forest with unusual animals and speaking to them. Wanting to spare himself the headache, William denies ever meeting her. The following day, he encounters Agnes in the forest, claiming that he has made her a new pair of gloves so she can better handle her falcon. She thanks him, immediately sensing his intention and realizing that he has come out of kindness and sympathy. Before anyone can see them together, she tries to slip away. However, William follows her and suddenly confesses that he knows who she really is. Surprised, she asks if he means that he knows her mother was a witch. Calmly, she explains that she is not ashamed of her mother at all. On the contrary, she tells him that she learned many things from her. As she speaks, she notices William staring at her, stumbling over his words. Amused, she teases him, saying that she thought he was a confident, accomplished teacher and never imagined he would struggle to say even a few words. At that point, William admits that he sometimes finds it difficult to speak to people. Gently, she helps him, suggesting that if words fail him, perhaps he should tell her a story instead. He begins telling her a famous Greek myth, the legend of Orpheus and Eurydice. Orpheus was a gifted musician who played an instrument resembling a guitar, and one day he fell deeply in love with Eurydice and married her. However, not long after their wedding, she was bitten by a snake and lost her life. Devastated by her death, Orpheus grieved so deeply that he descended into the underworld itself. There, he played his music for its rulers and pleaded with them to bring her back to life. Eventually, they agreed, but on one condition: Eurydice would walk behind him, and he must not turn around to look at her until they had completely left the underworld. Orpheus began the journey, walking forward while his wife followed behind. Yet doubt slowly crept into his heart, especially when he could not hear her footsteps. He kept telling himself that she was still there, that they were only moments away from freedom. However, just before reaching the gate of the underworld, he could no longer resist. He turned around and looked at her, and at that instant, he lost her forever. Agnes listens to his story, deeply moved by it. Gradually, she begins to feel drawn to him. She takes him with her and shows him how she gathers herbs from the forest, just as her mother once taught her. Gently, she places a plant on his head and explains that through this ritual, she can sense small details about the person standing before her. In that moment, she becomes certain that he is kind and means her no harm. From then on, their affection for one another grows stronger with each passing day. Ever since William first saw her, he has not stopped writing, as if she awakened something inside him. We see him composing poems and verses inspired by her presence. A few days later, he suddenly appears before her, clearly nervous, unsure how to say what is on his mind. Without hesitation, he finally confesses, almost breathlessly, that he wants to ask for her hand, that he will not allow her to belong to anyone else, and that he intends to go to her stepmother and her brother to formally ask for her as soon as possible. Agnes is both surprised and overjoyed by his words. Still, she warns him that her family would never agree. William, however, is unshaken. Calmly, he assures her that no one will stand in the way of their love. Sometime later, we see Agnes carrying their first child. She goes to William's house, and when he arrives and finds her there, he is confused and shocked. His mother quickly assumes that Agnes must have been thrown out of her home after the family discovered the scandal. Agnes corrects her, explaining that she left of her own free will. William struggles to understand what is happening until his mother tells him the truth. Agnes has confessed that she is pregnant and that he is the father of the child she carries. Pressed to answer and asked whether the girl standing before them is telling the truth, William finally admits it. Yes, she is pregnant with his child, and yes, he intends to marry her. At that moment, his mother turns on him, threatening that if he goes through with this marriage, he will no longer be her son, and she will never accept an alliance with a disgraced family like Agnes's. At that point, William's father steps in and silences his wife, telling her to stop. From his perspective, this marriage is nothing but a perfect solution. It would finally erase his debts and give him some peace, especially after his reputation in the village had turned sour, with people constantly whispering about his unpaid money and calling him a debtor wherever he went. He then turns to Agnes's brother and speaks calmly, almost persuasively, reminding him that he would surely want to protect his sister's honor before the entire village turns against her. His son is standing right there, ready to marry her and correct his mistake. Later, her brother Bartholomew speaks to Agnes privately and asks her how she truly feels about William and whether she is willing to marry him. She tells him that she loved William from the very first moment she saw him. She reminds him of their mother's final advice, that they should always follow their hearts. With certainty, she assures him that her heart has already chosen William and that he loves her just as deeply. At that moment, Bartholomew refuses to stand in the way of her happiness and tells her that he agrees. Agnes is overwhelmed with joy. For the first time, she feels that happiness might finally be within reach after a life that had been consumed by sorrow ever since the death of her father and mother. Soon after, the marriage takes place without delay. Months later, while still pregnant, Agnes heads into the forest alone to give birth, relying on the strength of nature in the primitive way of the 16th century. The labor is harsh and painful, pushing her to her limits. However, she survives and gives birth to Susanna, their first daughter. William and her brother arrive shortly after, and William holds his child in his arms for the very first time. From that moment on, William's life begins to change. His responsibilities grow heavier, and eventually he leaves his father's work, having reached his breaking point after endless insults and humiliation day after day. As time passes, William starts to feel an urgent need to express himself. Writing is the only thing he truly excels at. Gradually, he immerses himself deeper into it, spending most of his time alone, pouring his thoughts onto paper. When the words refuse to come, his frustration explodes. He grows angry, unable to write, to the point that his daughter wakes up to the sound of his shouting. Agnes rushes in, worried and confused, asking what is wrong. Still, William refuses to show her his writings, dismissing them as nothing more than scattered thoughts, nothing important at all. Agnes cannot understand what is happening to him at first. She begins to fear that he regrets marrying her. However, William reassures her, telling her that she and their daughter are the most beautiful thing that ever happened in his life. Still, he admits that he feels lost, unsure of his path, uncertain of what kind of work he should be doing. Agnes sits beside him, gently comforting him and helping him endure what he is going through. The following day, she turns to her brother and confides in him, explaining that her husband barely sleeps anymore and has become irritable over the smallest things. Bartholomew Bartholomew asks her directly whether William treats her badly. She tells him no. He presses further, asking if William has ever raised his hand against her. Again, she says no. From that, he concludes that what is happening is, sadly, normal, especially for a man without work who now carries heavy responsibilities. Losing his temper, he explains, is only natural. Agnes insists that there is only one solution. William must go to London. Her brother is taken aback by the idea. She explains that London is a great city, a place where everyone goes to find work, and perhaps fortune might finally smile on him there. She tells him this is the ideal solution. Otherwise, she fears William may lose his mind or suffer something far worse. He needs to stay busy, to work, and to secure a future for their daughter. She then makes it clear that she will not travel with him. Instead, she will stay behind and wait because their family will soon grow. At that moment, she reveals to her brother that she is pregnant. Bartholomew immediately warns her against what he calls a reckless idea. She will need her husband more than ever, and the distance will be unbearable. He also fears that if William follows her advice and leaves, their relationship may suffer. Agnes, however, reassures him that their love is far stronger than he imagines. Soon after, she presents the idea to William himself. He listens, accepts her advice, and, before long, begins preparing for the journey. It is his first time traveling, and he is deeply anxious, especially since he will be traveling only by river. Still, he promises her that he will return safely. If things go well, he says, he might even buy a house and send for them so they can all live together in the city. Before leaving, he asks her if she knows yet whether the baby is a boy or a girl. When she tells him she does not know, he reminds her that she always said she would have twins. She interrupts him, finishing his thought, and confesses that in her visions, she always sees them losing their lives. Because of that, she hopes the child will not be a twin, fearing that such a dark prophecy might come true. Agnes helps him prepare for the journey, carefully gathering his belongings. She refuses to say goodbye, clinging to the hope that they will see each other again soon. William, however, cannot bring himself to leave without a farewell. He embraces her, leaving her behind with her belly already showing, then sets off toward the city. It was Agnes herself who begged him to go, after seeing a vision that his life would be better if he traveled, and so he forces himself to honor her wish. As the final days of her pregnancy approach, Agnes feels that labor is near. As is her custom, she begins preparing to go into the forest, surrendering herself to nature. However, William had already asked his family to look after her. His mother, Mary, refuses to let her go anywhere alone. Instead, they take her in, stand by her side, and support her through the ordeal. In the midst of her labor, Agnes suffers a sudden nervous shock. She begins screaming that something terrible has happened to William, that he has died in the river. They rush to calm her, reassuring her that he arrived safely and even sent a letter. In it, William writes that he has signed a contract with a group of actors and agreed to supply them with gloves from his father's workshop, gloves they would wear during their stage performances. Gradually, Agnes calms down, and at that moment, they are able to help her give birth. She delivers her second child, and they joyfully tell her it is a boy. Then suddenly, everyone realizes the truth. She is carrying twins. There is still one more child to come. Terror grips Agnes as the dark prophecy from her visions floods back into her mind. It seems the curse she feared may indeed come true. Preparations begin immediately for the second delivery. At that moment, Agnes pleads with them to take care of her children and to help her unborn child arrive safely. She feels as if she is saying goodbye to life itself. Her mind drifts to the haunting image of her mother lying motionless on a bed, lifeless, a memory that has never left her. Minutes later, the second birth begins. She delivers a baby girl, but no sound follows. They try desperately to make the child cry, but nothing works. Gently, they tell Agnes that her daughter has died. Refusing to accept it, she insists they place the baby in her arms. They grant her wish. Moments pass. Then a miracle happens. The baby suddenly begins to cry. Overwhelmed with joy, Agnes realizes that her daughter has survived and that the dark prophecy has not come to pass. Years later, the children grow older. We see the twins, Judith and Hamnet, playing together, switching clothes and pretending to be one another. As always, they plot another playful trick on their parents. Susanna and Agnes, however, see right through them. They can easily tell the twins apart, yet they choose not to spoil the fun, allowing the children to enjoy their game. William pretends to fall for the prank, laughing along with them, joking as if they truly fooled him. Then he signals that it is time to carry out what they had planned. Gently, he places his hand over Agnes's eyes, telling her to prepare herself for a surprise. What he reveals is a small theatrical performance, starring their 3 children. Each of them knows their role by heart. They sing, act, and dance, filling the space with joy. Agnes watches, overwhelmed with happiness. T, proud of her children and of the small family that now fills her home with life. We then learn that after William's deal with the actors in London, he began contributing more than just gloves. Gradually, he started writing plays for them. At times, he even stepped onto the stage himself to perform. This marked the true beginning of his rise as a playwright. It becomes clear that Agnes was right when she insisted he travel to London. She always sensed that a greater future awaited him there. Meanwhile, we see Agnes teaching her daughters everything she learned from her mother: how to understand the soil, how to prepare herbs, and how to work the land. William, on the other hand, teaches Hamnet how to fence. They train together, laughing and playing. Before William leaves again, he warns his son not to spend too much time with his grandfather. He fears the old man might put him to work or humiliate him, just as he once did to William. Hamnet is clearly upset that his father is leaving again, returning to London without taking them along. William reassures him, promising that he will not be gone for long and that he will return soon. He places responsibility on Hamnet's shoulders, asking him to look after his sisters and his mother, to be the man of the house in his absence. That night, Agnes sits beside William. When he suggests that they travel with him next time, she gently refuses. Autumn is approaching, and Judith, their daughter, is ill and would not survive such a journey. On top of that, the plague has begun to spread through the country. She confesses her fear, admitting that she does not know how to protect her children from it. William calms her, telling her not to worry. He promises to leave her free to decide what is best. Once he has enough money, he vows to buy land for them in the village so they can all live together and never be separated again. The next morning, he says his goodbyes before leaving. Once more, he reminds Hamnet to take care of the family. After William walks away, Agnes sits with her son and asks him to give her his hand. She takes it gently. When Hamnet asks what she sees, she tells him that she sees him grown up, working alongside his father in London, standing on the stage. Hamnet lights up with excitement. He shares his dreams with her, wishing to become an actor, to fight with a sword, and to amaze everyone watching, hearing them applaud just for him. As time passes, the plague begins to spread even more aggressively, completely out of control. One morning, they try to wake Judith, but she does not respond. Panic sets in. Agnes rushes to her side and finds her burning with fever, her neck swollen. In that instant, she understands the truth. Her daughter has been infected with the plague. At that time, the plague was one of the deadliest diseases known to mankind. Anyone could be struck at any moment, especially those with weak immunity, like Judith. Its signs were unmistakable: raging fever, extreme exhaustion, and swelling in the neck so severe that the infected could barely move, slowly losing all their strength. There was no cure. People lived in terror of it because once the plague entered a body, it almost always meant death. The house is thrown into chaos. Everyone does everything they can, desperately trying to help Judith survive the illness. Mary urges Agnes to conserve her strength. Deep down, they all know the truth. No one can stand against the plague. They are weaker than it, and this is the moment when surrender feels inevitable. We then learn that Mary herself lost her 3 daughters to the same disease years earlier. Quietly, she tells Susanna that Agnes's efforts now mirror what she once did herself, fighting with everything she had, only to fail. She explains that the plague chooses its victims, and once it enters a household, it does not leave until it has destroyed it. That night, Hamnet comes to his twin, Judith. He is devastated, barely holding himself together. Through her pain, Judith asks him not to grieve and urges him to take care of his health. Hamnet breaks down, telling her he cannot live without her, that just as they came into this world together, he will not let her leave him behind. He lies beside her on the bed and promises that he will not allow the disease to separate them. He tells her that his life is hers, and if a sacrifice must be made for her to live, he will choose to give his own life. He vows to be brave until his final breath, fulfilling the promise he once made to his father to protect his family. The next morning, Agnes comes to check on Judith. She finds Hamnet still sleeping beside his sister. As she gently tries to wake him, warning him that he should not be lying next to her, she suddenly notices the truth. Hamnet too is burning with fever. He does not respond to her voice. Agnes desperately tries to wake him, attempting to treat him with herbs, but the disease has already taken hold of his body. She begins to lose her mind, unable to think, unable to understand how everything is slipping away from her. One child after another is being taken from her. She keeps whispering to him that he will be fine, clinging to hope, yet his condition continues to worsen. Hamnet fights for his life, struggling against unbearable pain. At that moment, Agnes orders them to remove Judith from the room immediately. We watch Hamnet as he can no longer resist the agony. Slowly, his strength fades and he loses his life. His mother collapses, her heart burning with grief. We then see them preparing his body for burial. Judith, now able to stand on her feet, approaches Agnes and apologizes, believing that Hamnet lost his life because of her. Agnes gently stops her, telling her that none of this was her fault and that she must not blame herself for something she had no control over. Through tears, Judith explains that Hamnet sacrificed his life to save her, that it should have been her who died and him who lived. Afterward, she goes to her brother one last time and says goodbye. At that moment, William returns. Judith runs toward him. When he asks about Hamnet, silence fills the room. Suddenly, he sees him before his eyes, wrapped in cloth, lying motionless on the bed. Shock freezes him in place. He walks closer, speaks to his son, and tells him that he did not disappoint him, that he was brave until the very end. Agnes sits beside William, breaking down before he can accuse her of anything. She blames herself, confessing that she did not realize Hamnet was sleeping beside his sister. She tells him that her fear of losing Judith consumed her to the point that she never stopped to wonder where Hamnet was. However, William comforts her, assuring her that she did everything she could and that there is no reason to punish herself with guilt. The next morning, William prepares to leave. He says goodbye to his wife and tells her that he must return to London. Agnes is hurt that he will not even stay a few more days. He explains that people are waiting for him, that rehearsals are approaching, and that the performance date is near, leaving him no choice but to go and oversee everything himself. Agnes needs him by her side, knowing she cannot face her grief alone. William, however, escapes into work, writing, and travel, running from the pain that lives inside him. A year after his son's death, William begins to pour his suffering into tragic performances. His plays grow darker, filled with sorrow and loss. Soon, his work becomes known for its deep sense of tragedy, and he rises as one of the most important playwrights in London, his grief etched into every word he writes. We then see William returning to visit them, bringing gifts with him, and more importantly, revealing that he has bought them a large house in the village. However, his relationship with Agnes has clearly been affected by the long distance between them, creating an emotional gap that now stands in the way. He asks her whether her brother has shown her the new house. She tells him that he has, then confronts him, asking why he did not take her himself and show it to her personally. At that moment, William finally confesses the truth. He was afraid that if he brought them along to see it, he might never leave again, choosing to stay with them instead. This only deepens her pain. She tells him she cannot leave the old house because her son's spirit still lives within it. William apologizes, admitting that he left her to suffer alone for an entire year, that he was not by her side, and that he only came to see her from time to time. Agnes confronts him directly, telling him that he has grown used to running away from his pain, even when he was with them. His life, she says, now belongs to the theater and to his writing. Even if he had stayed, he would still have been distant. She reminds him that their son died needing his father beside him, and that no apology can change that now. She then takes his hand. When he asks what she sees, she refuses to answer. Instead, she asks him to leave, telling him not to worry about them anymore. The next day, William follows her wish and returns to London. There, he begins revising his writings with the actors, rehearsing relentlessly. Again and again, they fail to deliver the lines the way he envisions them. He pushes them harder, insisting that they must feel every word they speak. We learn that he is preparing to present his new play, Hamlet. When he realizes the actors still cannot reach the depth he demands, he begins reciting the lines himself. We watch him speak the dialogue with raw emotion, pouring every ounce of his grief over his son's death onto the page. His sorrow becomes the foundation of the play, shaping its dialogue and its soul. Meanwhile, we see Agnes and her children moving into the large house William bought for them, trying to begin a new life. Her stepmother visits, offering condolences for the recent death of William's father. We learn that he passed away not long ago. She tells Agnes that she has just returned from the city, where she saw William preparing for his new play. She mentions that everyone is talking about it, that this work is expected to be a tragedy unlike anything before, not just an ordinary play. Tomorrow will be its first performance. Agnes is stunned. She is hurt to realize that they are, once again, the last to know. The next day, Agnes takes her brother with her and travels to the city. Together, they begin asking people if they know a man named William Shakespeare. It quickly becomes clear that his name is known everywhere. Everyone recognizes him, and they are easily directed to where he can be found. Soon after, the day of the performance arrives. People gather from every corner, all coming to witness the play. Among them is Agnes. For the first time in her life, she is about to watch one of William's plays. She sees the crowd packed together, buzzing with excitement, waiting eagerly for the show to begin. The performance starts. As she listens, she suddenly hears them speak the name Hamlet. In that moment, everything inside her freezes. Hamlet, Hamnet. The names are nearly identical, nothing more than a slight difference in sound. Drawn closer, she whispers to her brother that this is her son's name. Anger and pain collide inside her. She cannot bear hearing her child's name spoken so casually on a stage. For a brief moment, her imagination betrays her. She pictures her son alive, standing beside his father on the stage, acting with him just as he once dreamed. Then the actor playing Hamlet steps forward, and the audience greets him with applause, calling out his name. Agnes stares at him in disbelief. How could William have chosen someone who looks so much like their son? The resemblance is haunting. The only difference is his age. Fighting back her emotions, she decides to stay and watch. Hamlet stands before the audience, mourning the death of his father. He learns that his mother, the queen, is about to marry his uncle. His grief deepens into anger and despair. Then William appears on stage, embodying the ghost of Hamlet's father. He reveals the truth, that his death was no accident, that his own brother murdered him in a cruel way, poisoning him, letting the pain spread through his body as his soul slowly slipped away, all so he could seize the throne. At that moment, Agnes is overwhelmed by memories of losing her son to the plague. As William speaks, his voice filled with sorrow, it feels as though he is explaining to his own child what happened, pouring his grief into every word. Agnes turns to her brother and tells him that William is speaking about her son, about the pain they lived through. She refocuses on the stage, silently begging William to look at her, to notice that she is there. Almost as if he senses her presence, he turns his head. Their eyes meet. He sees her sitting in the front rows. Relief and joy flicker across his face. William continues his performance, finishing the ghost's farewell to his son with unbearable pain. At that moment, Agnes can no longer hold herself together. She breaks down, collapsing under the weight of grief, love, and everything that has been left unspoken. Meanwhile, Hamlet begins pretending to be mad, using that disguise to expose his uncle's crime in front of everyone. He delivers powerful speeches and reflections that deeply move the audience. William watches closely, pride filling his eyes as he sees his play succeed before him, his art reaching every soul in the room. As Hamlet finally reveals the truth about his uncle, we learn that he has accidentally killed the father of the woman he loves. Overwhelmed by grief, she loses her sanity and ultimately takes her own life. Her brother, driven by rage, vows to avenge her death. Soon, a fierce duel erupts between him and Hamlet, watched by the crowd with breathless intensity. So real, it feels as though it is no longer a performance at all. In the final moments of the play, Hamlet is struck by a poisoned blade. His mother, too, loses her life, having been poisoned herself. Refusing to die before justice is served, Hamlet gathers his remaining strength, kills his uncle, and finally reclaims his father's honor. The poison spreads through his body as he struggles for his last breath. At that moment, Agnes grips her brother's hand, and the entire audience seems to share her pain, united in a single, overwhelming wave of emotion. One by one, Hamlet and the other main characters fall. The play ends in complete tragedy, leaving a lasting mark on everyone who witnessed it. As for Agnes, she feels a deep, quiet pride in her husband. He has become a great playwright, transforming the pain they lived through into powerful art on the stage, letting his suffering inspire his creative journey. She understands now that this is his only way of expressing his grief, the only language his heart truly knows. At last, she understands him. In that final moment, they imagine their young son standing on the stage, smiling as he says goodbye to them. And the film closes on a truly epic ending, one that captures the heart and lingers long after the curtain falls.